Matter.
Welcome to our first edition of Dark Matters with Sky Phillips. And I'm looking over here because I'm reading something. And over here is somebody we're about ready to talk to. His name is Derek Gilbert. He's the host of 5 and 10, a daily news analysis program for SkyWatch TV, and author of a number of books on spiritual forces behind geopolitics, the end times prophecy, and most recently, Giants, Gods, and Dragons. Co-authored with his wife, Sharon K. Gilbert. Together, they host Unraveling Revelation for SkyWatch TV. That's probably where you know his name or have seen his books. And they've launched a new show this year. It's called The Bible's Greatest Mysteries, and I urge you to watch it on SkyWatch TV. Great programming. Welcome, Derek. Now I can look over at you.
Sky, it's good to see you again, brother. I think people would be surprised to find out that it's two old disc jockeys getting together and talking about things that we never would have dreamed of talking when we were working together 30 years ago. You're
right about that, because 30 years ago, I worked in nightclubs. I did all kinds of stuff. And we ran a very controversial radio station at the time.
We did.
In St. Louis. It was called Hot 97. And I think the funniest thing about that radio station was one of the liners on the station was, "We serve 2 states, 47 counties, and Carl's Cow Barn in Festus." I mean, it was great. Welcome, brother. It's so good to see you.
Same here. God has led us down some strange paths to get us here, but all of this that's come before has been training for what we're doing right now.
I guess that's exactly what it is. I have my first question, and my first question here revolves around what's happening today. We're living in a very, very trying time in America and the world. Mm-hmm. You can't believe anything anymore that you see on TV. You just can't do it. So with COVID-19, a new administration, not only the monetary reset system that people are talking about, but the COVID-19 vaccine, one side says that it's fake. The other side says that it's, real. And one side is saying, well, you're going to get the mark of the beast. I sent a video to you that had been circulated. Somebody had sent that to me like 4 times. And my son sent it to me, and I finally watched it. I don't like to open videos that I don't know where they're from. Yeah. Right. So anyway, he opened it up, and I watched it, and I was shocked. Because if I was someone who wasn't watching TV or somebody elderly and believed, because think about this, people who are older than me, let's say 20 years older than me, they still feel they can trust TV.
Right.
Yeah. And it's not like
my mother's in that category. She grew up in the Great Depression. She saw polio eradicated during her lifetime, smallpox pretty much eradicated during her lifetime. And so when somebody in a white lab coat says something, she tends to believe it. Yeah. And that's how we've been trained. I mean, there's a very famous experiment that was conducted back in the late 50s on this. Your viewers probably remember, where volunteers were asked to conduct a test, and they thought the test was on learning how to teach people on the other side of a screen. They couldn't see them, and they would ask questions, and for every wrong answer, they would give what they thought was an increasingly severe series of electrical shocks, to the point where they got to the point on the board where it was like XXX. And they essentially, the experiment was to see if people who were being told by people in white lab coats, who presumably knew what they were doing, it's okay, we'll take responsibility. But this says XXX. I mean, this is deadly. I mean, Well, the majority of people went ahead and flipped the switch, even when the person on the other side of the screen wasn't responding anymore, and presumably had passed out. So that shows the level at which we can be programmed to believe what those in control want us to believe.
Yes.
Messaging and the form of the message is very important. I mean, you and I know something about this. Both of us programmed radio stations, and our goal was to convince a target group of listeners that our advertisers wanted to serve that we were the best choice for their particular music listening habits.
Exactly.
And that we were just like them, and so they should relate to us and listen to our station over the competitors, and so on. That's basically how you and I put bread on the table for our families for many, many years.
Yeah.
There are others out there who are really good at this, and they use different means of getting that message out. And so we have to be very discerning, not just from a Christian perspective. For us as Christians, it's even more important because we're not just trying to discern truth from lies, we're trying to discern spiritual truth from spiritual lies, and that's even more important.
Yeah.
When it comes to the vaccine and COVID-19, Sharon and I, we also produce a program that is kind of being put on hiatus in favor of this brand new program, The Bible's Greatest Mysteries. But for 5 years, we've produced a program called Sci Friday, where every Friday we would sit down and discuss items in the news of a scientific nature, but through a Christian lens, from a Christian perspective. Sharon's degree is in molecular biology. She graduated as an adult student, which means she actually studied, not like me when I was 19. She actually studied in college and graduated with honors with a degree with an emphasis in genetics. She understands the science behind what's being discussed when it comes to the virus and when it comes to the vaccine.
Yes.
She can read the academic papers and sort out the wheat from the chaff. She was very early in warning people 1 year ago when this virus was just beginning to emerge from China, said, hey, this is something to be concerned about because the coronavirus is similar to, well, the SARS virus that was so deadly back in 15, 20 years ago in China. Is a coronavirus. The MERS virus that we saw just a few years ago, 2013, in Saudi Arabia, also a coronavirus. It spreads easily. The common cold is a coronavirus. And you know, if you got kids, you know how easily that can spread. One of them goes to school to come home, pretty soon the whole family is coughing. So she was very early in saying, we need to pay attention to this. This could be serious. And so back last January, February, March, we were talking about it when a lot of the rest of the country was like, this is no big deal. This is no big deal. Yeah. And Sharon was saying, no, what President Trump has done, shutting down travel, is smart. We need to do it. But as more data came in, and we began to see the infection fatality rate drop, and especially as we came into the current season here, the winter of 2020, 2021, and we begin to see that the annual flu season has basically disappeared. Statistics reporting stations are showing that the seasonal flu is down like to 2% of normal. That doesn't make sense unless a lot of COVID cases are actually the flu in disguise.
Yeah, and a lot of people, they just really kind of grew those numbers huge.
Yes.
You know, in a short period of time, and people don't realize what happened back in 1918. I mean, that's true. That started right in Kansas is where it started, Manhattan, Kansas.
Well, actually, Sharon's done some research on that. It actually probably started a couple of years earlier, believe it or not, in China. Really? And that it was spread around the world as countries brought Chinese workers in to replace the young men that were being sent off to fight in Europe. Okay. Canada, the United States, the UK, bringing in workers from China, and they were bringing something with them. It's possible that the what was called Justinian's plague in the 6th century AD, likewise came across the Silk Road from China. So this is not the first time this sort of thing has happened. But what we saw with COVID-19, unlike 100 years ago, you know, my grandparents survived the great influenza of 1918, 1919. In fact, I've got some scans of letters. Okay. Well, I've got some scans of letters that my grandfather sent back from the front in World War I. He was in the motor pool for a motor cavalry unit. And every letter he signed to my great-grandmother, I am feeling fine and in the best of health, your loving son, Eskel. Like, I am feeling fine and in the best of, and then I realized the Spanish flu, fall of 18 and the spring of 19. So this was deadly. Some estimates it killed between 50 and 100 million people around the world. Here around the world, we're at 2 million. If I remember the most recent numbers correctly. So there's no comparison between this and what happened 100 years ago. No, and there isn't. Back in 18 and 19, we did not shut down the economy. We did not ban fans from athletic stadiums. So why this time? And this is where we get to where, you know, we put on the tinfoil hat. We wear them so that you at home don't have to. Like Rahm Emanuel, the former mayor of Chicago, former chief of staff for Barack Obama, once famously said, never let a good crisis go to waste. This is exactly what the World Economic Forum has done with COVID-19. The World Economic Forum was founded by a man named Klaus Schwab, who is an Austrian economist. They just celebrated their 50th anniversary. He looks like a villain from Central Casting in a Bond movie. You know, he's bald. He speaks with a heavy German accent. Maybe a nice guy, I don't know. But when he sits there and he's speaking with this German accent about fundamentally restructuring the global society, it's like,
should I pull out my concealed carry?
It's like Blofeld. It's like Blofeld from the Bond movies. Yeah. Anyway, he wrote a book a couple of years ago. He's been promoting an idea that was originated about 10 years ago. A fellow named Richard Florida wrote a book called The Great Reset. And Schwab has picked this up. And as soon as it became clear that this pandemic was going to go global, they began promoting the idea of the Great Reset. And their definition of this is a fundamental restructuring of the world economy.
Yep.
At a fundamental level, what that means is they want to take those at the top of the pyramid, and I use that term deliberately for you conspiracy theorists out there, to hang on to their wealth while making sure that the rest of us are basically reduced to the lowest common denominator. They want to make us all serfs. They want to destroy the middle class in the Western world.
Yes.
That's Europe, UK, Canada, North America, Canada, United States. They want to destroy the middle class so that we essentially become dependent
upon them,
on those at the top of the pyramid. Right. This is in a, not just a spiritual way, because it's that as well, and that's even more important, but even in an economic way. This is a return to Babel. And I've talked about this before, how archaeologists have found that the period of history that would have included Nimrod and his kingdom, which is based, according to the Bible, at Erech, which is just an alternate spelling of the name of the modern country, Iraq. Yes. The ancient city was called Uruk, U-R-U-K. Archaeologists have identified that period of history by when they find a site with ancient artifacts. If they find a lot of these little clay bowls, really crude clay bowls, I mean, they're not glazed, there's no decoration, you can still see the fingerprints in it. It's almost like a child made it out of Play-Doh. But at these sites, dated to this period of history in Iraq and Syria, ancient Mesopotamia, they find hundreds, sometimes thousands of these, what they call beveled rim bowls, which they've determined based on text evidence and the number of these they found were like the 5,000-year-old equivalent of a modern styrofoam fast food container. The workers would essentially get this little clay bowl about the size of your hand. That was their daily ration of grain. Here's your food for the day. Now go out and work in the fields and then come home at night into the city. Essentially, that's what the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset is all about. It's about pulling us into cities, making us dependent on the government handout, universal basic income. Essentially, it is trying to make the world a global Babel dependent on a one world government.
Yes.
So that is the prophetic implication here, because you don't even need to believe in end times Bible prophecy to see how this type of technocratic government would be really, really useful to a global dictator.
And I think, and I think that what's happening with these individuals is they are definitely moving the goalpost wherever they're going, and if they hit you with it and desensitize you with it, like right now, people don't think anything when they see a full sex scene in a movie or they see different things in the movie. They don't think anything about it. You've been desensitized to look at it as being morally okay.
And it's partly because they discount the idea of God or an objective moral standard.
Yes.
Transhumanism, this idea that, and this is the other aspect of this that goes all the way back to Eden. I mean, goes beyond Babylon all the way back to Eden. The idea that we can be as gods is kind of baked into this Great Reset idea. One of the concepts that's central to the Great Reset is the idea that we are now entering a fourth industrial revolution. The first industrial revolution was the use of coal and steam to power machinery. And then the second industrial revolution was automation to make it more effective. The third industrial revolution was the use of information technology to simplify, to make our workforce more powerful, to give us access to more information and so forth. The fourth industrial revolution essentially is the merger of technology and biology.
Mm-hmm.
They want us to become more than human. In other words, transhumanism is a drive toward what they call the singularity, the moment at which we are no longer human, where technology allows us to transcend the limits of our biology.
Yep,
to become
you're absolutely
more
right.
than human,
Yeah.
Both cognitively and physically and so forth. And then we can become whatever we want. It is self-directed evolution, which not coincidentally was the motto of the eugenicist movement, the eugenics movement of 100 years ago.
Yeah.
The eugenics movement, which gave birth to Hitler's final solution,
Yeah.
the elimination of the inferior races. This is part of the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset. This fourth industrial revolution is transhumanism, this idea that we can be as gods and we can create heaven here on earth. It's what Nimrod tried to do at Babel. It's what the serpent in the garden promised Adam and Eve. Hey, you could be as gods. And it's what we're being told that we can expect out of this Great Reset. And they believe that this COVID-19 pandemic is the perfect opportunity. Hey, look, everything is broken right now anyway.
Yeah.
Rather than going back to the way it was, let's build back better. Hey, guess which presidential candidate used that as his official campaign slogan?
Yeah, we all know that person. Sleepy Joe.
Yep.
I can tell you right now that just because today is the inauguration day, just what I'm seeing on there is really starting to scare me. We're going back with the World Health Organization. Is that a good idea? Are we still going to do this? Are we going to do that? And there are people out there, and I'm not going to say who they are, but I do have some friends that are in the military that are saying, keep your eyes open, get right with the man.
Yeah.
Make sure that you have got your bases covered, because nobody else is thinking about your bases right now.
Right. And ultimately, that's what this is all about. This is not, a lot of Christians are very demoralized right now because of the way things went. There are many who put their trust in, I hate to say this, but it's true based on the reactions that I've seen on social media today, put their trust in Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Now,
you can't.
Donald Trump may or may not be a man of God.
Yeah.
But he was certainly God's man for the last 4 years.
Yes.
God used, and there are some Christians, typically a little more liberal, who just cannot accept that God could have used somebody like a Donald Trump. Well, okay, but God used Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
God used Cyrus, who was a pagan, a polytheist, to achieve his ends. So this was not groundbreaking for God. I mean, there is precedent in the Bible for this type of thing. But we as Christians need to make sure that we are not worshiping the man, because our hope is in Christ. And our hope in Christ is not in this life only, as Paul wrote to the church at Corinth. If our hope in Christ is in this life only, then we of all men are most miserable. We are playing a long game. Yes, the events of the last year, the last 12 months are disappointing, but that is not the end game. Let the supporters of President Biden, and that's the first time I've issued those two words together in a sentence, by the way, Sky. Let the supporters of President Biden celebrate. But think about this. Many of them who are celebrating, who are partying tonight, because President Biden has been inaugurated and is the 46th president of the United States. Many of them do not know Jesus Christ.
No, they don't. No.
They are putting their hope in this life only. And like the Pharisees who made a public show of their religion, Jesus said they're getting their reward in this life. And that is tragic when you think about it. That's why Jesus said we are to love our enemies, because like the ones who nailed him to the cross, they know not what they do. They don't understand the stakes of the game that they're playing. They think we're the losers.
Yeah.
We're running a different race.
We are. Their race is they want to be happy. I want it all. I want it now. Now, one of the things that I did say is that I feel like this world has just exploded, and the United States adopted the new motto of just do it. It's okay. This is crazy to even think of this. But I see it. I see it in the youth of today. And you and I both being in radio, we know what we've seen over the years in TV. We know how people are. We some of the people that you think are the worst people are some of the best, and some of the people you think are the best are the worst. I believe the church is made for us sinners. Mm-hmm. It's made for us sinners. It's made for us to go and be worthy of God's presence. And the way he made that possible after the serpent was
through his sacrifice.
That's right. Jesus
Christ. Sacrifice, his blood. It is only through the shedding of his blood that we are made worthy to enter the presence of God, to be restored to what scholars call the divine council.
Yes.
Which is a term that you see only in Psalm 82, but essentially it's the group that met and walked with God on his holy mountain in his garden, Eden. Yes, Eden was a garden, but it was on a mountain. Check Ezekiel 28.
That's right.
But Adam and Eve, because of their disobedience, were kicked out and separated from that council. Our destiny is like the prodigal son. The prodigal son, that parable, is really about the whole history of humanity. We squandered our inheritance. We went off into the world. We wallowed in the pigsty and
everything else.
Yeah, and interestingly, because pigs are not kosher. I mean, that's doubly
right.
doubly bad from a Jewish perspective. And remember, Jesus was the consummate Jew.
Yes, he was.
When he told this to the Jewish followers out there, he was tending pigs, and now he's coming back, and he's unclean. And the father ran out and put a cloak on him and ordered the fatted calf to be killed. And the older brother, hey, that's the angels, the faithful angels who have been obedient to God all this time. Yeah. They're saying, hey, what is all this? What's going on here? Mm-hmm. And the father said, hey, look, you're going to get your reward. You've been faithful, and I love you, but let's celebrate, because he was lost and now he's found. That is humanity. That is us. That is our track through history. We are coming back to be restored to this divine counsel and this fellowship, to be made part of the family again. Have you ever noticed in the New Testament how often Paul especially uses sonship language or inheritance language, how we are being restored? We will be as sons of God.
Yes.
It's because we are being restored to that family. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
The world thinks without God, we can do what is right in our own eyes. See that phrase a lot in the Old Testament. You see what happened to the Israelites when they went that direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Moabites or the Midianites or the Edomites came in and basically smacked them around until they repented.
Yeah.
That's where we are in America. We're fat and happy. We think we're the masters of our own destiny. We can self-direct evolution and become as gods. Well, no, I'm sorry. I do not want to merge with a computer.
Just think how bad the presidency was. Well, think if you were God.
Yeah.
Those movies with, Carrie and Morgan Freeman, man, they were great, but it's show business is what it is.
Bad theology. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But, the one thing that I want to say is that I think we've been desensitized. We have our manual. Our manual is the Bible. Read it. Find the books that are out there from the scholars that are trying to teach. You're one of them. Your wife is one of them. Tom Horn is one of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are out there that are trying to bring you this information. You just need to look for it. That's what you need to do. Tell us about your new book that you're writing right now.
Well, the new book is called Saturn's Reign, and that's a reference to a poem that was written by the Roman poet Virgil just after the time Julius Caesar was assassinated and his nephew Octavian rose to power, became known as Caesar Augustus, who was the emperor of Rome when Jesus was born in Nazareth. He wrote a poem around the year 39 BC called Eclogue 4, and it makes reference to a time when the majestic cycle of centuries rolls around. Justice returns old Saturn's reign with a new breed of men sent down from heaven. It's an interesting poem because there are some groups, occult groups, and some Christian groups even throughout history that have taken that poem to be prophecy. It references the Sibylline oracle, which were a series of oracles written in a Jewish community in that period in the 1st century BC.
Wow.
And there are some Christians who took that eclogue to be a prophecy of the coming Messiah. Well, it's not. Yeah. A new breed of men sent down from heaven, etc. A little further in the poem, it talks about heroes with gods commingling.
Yeah.
Hero in the Roman or Greek sense. When you're talking about the classical era, those were the demigods. In other words, the hybrid children of gods and humans, which in the biblical sense means they were considered Nephilim.
Yeah.
And the early church understood that those were the giants, the mighty men who were of old. And when they perished in the flood of Noah, their spirits were condemned to continue wandering the earth, tormenting humanity until the judgment. In other words, they became demons. That was the understanding of the early church until about the time of Augustine in the early 5th century. But that's what the prophets believed. That's what the disciples and apostles believed. It's what the early church believed. So like some of those guys learned directly from Jesus. I think they know their theology. So
yes,
that is who Virgil was writing about, the heroes with gods commingling. Now, Saturn is the interesting character. He was known to the Greeks as Kronos and to the Phoenicians as Baal Hammon. Saturn and Baal Hammon both received human sacrifice. So did Kronos of the Greeks. Now, you might remember the myth of Kronos in Greek. He was the one who was the king of the Titans, rebelled against the sky god Uranus by castrating dad with a sickle. Then he was overthrown by Zeus and the Olympians and banished to Tartarus. Well, interestingly enough, the Bible tells us about a group of angels who were likewise banished to Tartarus.
Yeah, and that's not with a fish sandwich. That's not,
That's right. That's not tartar sauce. Tartarus is a separate level from Hades. And there's only one place in the Bible that Tartarus is mentioned. It's in 2 Peter 2, verse 4, where he writes, "For God did not spare the angels when they sinned, but thrust them down to..." Now, the English Bible translations generally say hell.
Yes.
But the word is Tartarus. And that's, in the Greek mind, that was as far below Hades as the earth is below heaven. It's a separate level reserved for supernatural rebels who were a threat to the divine order. The context of 2 Peter and the context of Jude makes it clear that those sinning angels they're talking about were the angels, the sons of God from Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4, who found that the daughters of men were fair and took wives of any they chose, and from them came the giants of old, the Nephilim.
Yep.
And so there's a lot to unpack there, but as I track the history of this old god, Saturn, Kronos, Baal Hammon, I find that he's also Enlil of the Sumerians, El of the Canaanites, Kumarbi of the Hurrians and Hittites, Odin of the Norse. He's everywhere, and he's still influenced. In fact, I'm going to make the case that I think he's also Molech of the Bible.
Yes.
The one who demanded child sacrifice. And what have we done in America today? We've made it an industry. We've made it almost a production line industry.
Yeah.
The abortion industry.
Oh, yeah.
We don't build an altar and burn them on the fire in the altar anymore, but we are still sacrificing our children, and we're doing it at an alarming rate, a rate that the ancient Phoenicians could never have imagined.
No.
And there are some occult groups that are still worshiping this entity today under the name Saturn and Enlil. And interestingly enough, we've just entered an age with the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn on the winter solstice of 2020.
Yeah.
We have now officially, according to astrologers, moved into the age of Aquarius, which is ruled by Saturn. So Saturn's reign, that's coming in the spring or summer of 2021.
Well, another thing too, when we're talking about this, I saw another report from NASA today about Apophis,
right.
How they are trying to land a probe on it right now. They're trying to make that jump, back over to that asteroid to see what it's made of with this, I guess, some kind of spaceship that they have that will go out, into orbit afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to find, that could be wormwood. I know that, there's a lot of different things that are out there. But what I urge you to do is I urge you to look up Derek P. Gilbert Okay. Look up SkyWatch TV, look up his wife, and then get their books because they're very informative. They really spell it out as simple as you could possibly spell it out. And if you're looking for that information today, he's got it. Well, Derek, thank you so much. Now, a lot of people don't know this. I'm gonna slip off to a little sidebar note here. Derek is the individual who hired me in St. Louis, and because of the station he was at, I met my wife. And I won't go into a long story about it, but I met my wife and my beautiful children. I mean, absolutely. I've been a blessed man. I can say that. And I can say that God and Jesus has been a guide. Now, I may cuss. I may do, some things that other people do. But I'm not an evil man. I've never been an evil man. And I feel that this is something that I can now talk about that I couldn't talk about on the radio. Mm-hmm. Things that I could discuss. Because every time I would bring something up, everybody would be, you're a conspiracy theorist and you're this and you're that. It's like, well, when was the last time you read the Bible? And that's it.
Conspiracy theories are biblical.
They are, aren't they? Derek, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. And please let us know. I'll put up the information for what you have and what you're doing. The education is there. You just need to accept it. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Dark Matter.
Found in the quarantine zone.
Matter.